was walking down the street, feeling kindly, when the wind came out your butt to my wig off. Oh, it was a sight to see. My hair flying in the breeze, 'cause the wind came out your butt to my wig off. People started laughing, they couldn't believe their eyes as my wig flew through the sky. Oh, what a surprise! I tried to catch it, but it slipped right through my hands. 'Cause the wind came out your butt, and now somewhere in the land. Oh, wind came out your butt to my wig off. Baby, try like shit. Did you see the car that you almost hit? I'd rather take the bus instead. Riding with you, I'm gonna end up dead. Don't ask me if I need a lift. Baby, try like shit. She just ran through always stop. I ain't trying to get stopped by the cops. Baby, why the hell did I let you drive? It's a miracle that you're still alive. Don't ask me if I need a lift. Baby, drive like shit. Oh, 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 oh. Look out, my girl is driving. Watch out, my girl drives like shit. Whoa, 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 whoa. My girl is driving. Watch out, my girl drives like shit. You can make it go. Heard to think of tongue. Gotta let you know I will fuck you up. I whoop that ass. Talking all that shit, spank that ass. Till you down like a bitch. So I ain't playing. I'm here to get that. Whoop that ass. It's time to punch face. I'm the one who brings you pain in the rain. I whoop that ass until the bell rings. I already know that I do not play. Go up like I'm cutting down hay. I whoop that ass every single night. Spank that ass till they stop the fight. I'll tell you the story of a man. A radioactive tips in his hand. His hand was 10 times his normal size. That helped him get his money on time. He knew it was bitch was telling a lie, which was 100% of the time. Superpowers to make a bitch listen. They get her naked with sex-ray vision. Keep the police station in a single bound. Slapping bitches down to the fucking ground. His name was famous across the land. They called him the pimp named Superhand. Oh shit, yeah, pimp named Superhand. He had powers no other pimp had. Oh fuck yeah, pimp named Superhand. That motherfucker was Superman. Asking for dinner ain't asking for much. You had one job and still fuck it up. Sometimes you gotta learn respect. I use my gift hand to correct. It's called a bitch slap. Come get the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad to teach you, you should ask yourself who taught you to hate being what God made you.
Welcome back. Welcome back. One more again. Glad to have you in the building this evening. I am your host, School for Justice, here where we live, love, laugh, and conquer police brutality. And on tonight, we have a firefighter that is arrested for doing his job. So, man, let's just dive on in, jump on into the topic and the content. So I want you to sit back, relax. And my slogan, get your popcorn, get your wine, get whatever you may need. Relax, stretch your legs out, and let's enjoy the show. Thanks for coming on in. I appreciate your support. Salute, salute to audit, to lackluster, and much, much more. And smashing that like button as you enter into the door. Let's go, folks. All right, here we go.
The federal claims.
Some big bad guy, police officers.
Why can't you guys just resolve this? I mean, it seems like you're spending a lot of money fighting this when you're not fighting for some grand principle here.
This court
Are
takes
you
plaintiff's
aware of
version.
any other case where at the scene of an emergency, a police officer arrested someone who's attending to someone medically?
For that reason alone, that's a simple reason why the qualified immunity test, for the second prong of the qualified immunity test, to apply here.
Or it could be that it's just such an outrageous thing to do that nobody's ever done it.
Welcome back to the Lackluster channel. In February of 2014, volunteer firefighter Jacob Gregoire responded to an accident on the interstate. As an engineer, his duties consisted of pumping water to fires, maintaining equipment on board the engine, and overall safety of the crew while responding to an incident.
Okay, I don't have time for a cell phone. This is ridiculous. CHP is arresting Engineer Gregoire for where he spotted the fire engine.
A CHP officer handcuffs a Chula Vista firefighter on the scene of a crash. And tonight, we're hearing the reaction over the radio as the incident escalated.
CHP will not give us information about who this officer is or if he's been reprimanded for cuffing a firefighter during a rollover accident in Chula Vista last night on the 805 near Telegraph Canyon Road and East Orange Avenue.
Gregoire positioned the engine to block oncoming traffic, creating a pocket to protect emergency personnel and the victims on scene. But when a CHP officer arrived late, he immediately began instructing firefighters to move their apparatus to get the highway open once again.
Firefighters say they park at an angle to protect emergency crews, patients, and drivers.
While two other fire engines left the scene, Gregoire says he refused to leave because his rig was acting as a buffer, protecting the ambulance from traffic.
In the middle of patient care, Engineer Gregoire refused, citing safety concerns, which led to the officer arresting him for obstruction.
Okay, people, so as we see, this is ridiculous. So the officer wants him to move a certain equipment according to whatever his motive or his purpose was or his agenda. When the firefighter and the squad explain that's a part of the procedure. That's what they got going on there in the highway and in the city. And it's for safety purposes of the neighborhood, of the community. And so the officer, this hits the local news there. We're in California tonight. People were in California tonight. And they're in that county. It hits the local news simply because the officer actually arrests him and sent for obstruction. So we're going to continue to jump on in and see what goes on next because this goes into an actual trial. There's qualified immunity involved in a hearing and so forth and, and more. But that's what we got going down, people. First of all, the question is, why are you out there? Nobody called for you. Nobody sent for you. And if it was your site to come on the scene for whatever purpose, or you was required by your superior, why are you involved with a separate company, firefighters department's job? Why are you even involved in the first place? So the officer is literally arresting this firefighter for doing his job. All right, let's keep watching and see what jumps on in on the next scene.
We asked you to clear the road and you said no and you did arrest him for doing it.
We're in the middle of patient care with patients on the freeway. They're putting him in handcuffs at this time and walking him away.
He made all firefighters look good in that situation. He was there to protect the citizens, and he was willing to take a stand to do that.
Gregoire was handcuffed and detained for approximately 30 minutes before being released, and eventually the officer was identified as Sergio Flores, and the CHP stood by their officer's actions.
A local firefighter who was cuffed by the CHP at an accident scene says that he was humiliated inside the CHP cruiser.
It was a very odd, surreal situation. I asked him, I said, well, are you prepared to take care of these two patients?
Folks, this is the highway patrol. I can't believe it. It's a little unbelievable. My mother used to work for them for years. I grew up in LA. And so they have good reputation, strong company, very firm. And so I don't know what's changed, but evidently we have an ignorant officer or just an arrogant officer on the scene, right? And now he's saying that because you did not move the equipment, that's what the argument or the debate is about. He wants him to move a certain equipment that they have to use there on the road and on the highways for safety purposes during the city. So let's just see what the press conference is speaking of. I appreciate you smashing that like button as you peep into the building.
And he replied without even thinking, those two people are not my problem.
Afterward, Gregoire filed a lawsuit for the wrongful arrest and excessive force.
Because of a bulky uniform and past shoulder pain, he asked Officer Flores to loosen the cuffs.
I said, I'm not going anywhere. Can you please just loosen the cuffs? Click. They got a little bit tired.
Gregoire says when he asked again, the officer laughed at him.
Officer Sergio Torres claimed that he was entitled to qualified immunity because making the unlawful arrest was a reasonable mistake. He would also argue that handcuffing an arrestee was not excessive force. However, in the lawsuit, Gregoire claimed that on 2 occasions he had asked the officer to loosen the cuffs, and both times the officer tightened them instead.
Gregoire.
Well, sir, welcome to our world because you have a great profession. You know, you a servant of the public, a worker of the public. And you have people who work and make it from check to check, you know, people in certain classes or neighborhoods or categories who experience this every day, being violated, being abused, being disrespected. And then once they're bogusly arrested, they're being, again, abused because he asked, can you loosen the cuffs? And he intentionally beats a smart ass and tighten them even the more. So, welcome to our world, is my point. Unfortunate, but it's real. All right, so we're gonna see what happens on next. And I might go back just a tad so we can make sure we don't miss exactly what the disagreement was about. Okay? All right, let's continue to watch.
Says he's filed a legal claim against the CHP and state because it's clear the incident is being swept under the rug. His attorney, Dan Gillian, says he's uncovered a documented 2010 incident involving Officer Flores threatening another firefighter with arrest.
There's people within the department that I think want to hide certain facts, and that's the problem.
Aside from those claims, the issue of whether or not Officer Flores had probable cause to arrest and place Gregoire in cuffs was in question as well. In a motion for summary judgment, the district court found that the officer's arrest of Gregoire for obstructing the officer's duties was not justified, given that Gregoire was acting within his duties as a firefighter to ensure the scene of the accident was safe. The court ruled that no reasonable officer would believe it was lawful to arrest a firefighter.
So, folks, this is all over an accident. You have all emergency squad members to come out during certain accidents, depending on how severe it is. You know, you got the police, you got the firefighters, you have the ambulance, right? And so in this case, all emergency departments were needed. And everybody should be out there working together. It's called teamwork. And you arrest the firefighter because he didn't do what you said. I keep telling you people, this is a power trip. Some people are not qualified to be in a position of authority. And again, it was for safety purposes, the reason the firefighter allowed the equipment to remain out there by the highway.
Acting in that capacity, qualified immunity did not apply, and thus Officer Flores appealed the decision.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
To the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Deputy Attorney General Robert Rogoyski from the California Attorney General's Office, here on behalf of defendants, appellants, California Highway Patrol, and Officer Sergio Flores. May it please the court. This is a qualified immunity case, and the court should find that the doctrine of qualified immunity applies to both of the federal claims in this action. I'm going to start today by talking about the arrest claim, and then I'll move on to the excessive force claim, and then if there's any time remaining, I'll address the issue of jurisdiction over the state law claims.
All right, so I kind of want to go back just a tad, right? Because I want to make sure we don't miss anything during the actual
A rollover accident in Chula Vista last night on the 805 near Telegraph Canyon Road and East Orange Avenue.
Gregoire positioned the engine to block oncoming traffic, creating a pocket to protect emergency personnel and the victims on scene. But when a CHP officer arrived late, he immediately began instructing firefighters to move their apparatus to get the highway open once again.
Firefighters say they park at an angle to protect.
So this was the truck. The firefighter truck, the apparatus. That's why I go back. I reiterate, as I say. So I make sure we don't miss. We see step for step, play by play, right? And scene on scene. So this was the actual, now this is the accident we see here, which was on the side of the highway, right? We see that listed on the side of the highway, of the interstate, and there the officer pull up late, as the narrator said, and now he's demanding the firefighters to move their truck because he claims it's blocking traffic. But if we look on the highway, the traffic or the cars are going smooth. Traffic is flowing okay. It may be a little slow down as normal during the accident, but it's nothing outrageous, nothing unsafe that's going on to the people in the highway or to the traffic or to the vehicles, right? So that's what this is about. Okay, I want to make sure I'm on point and I'm on topic. I'm on beat. Wow. And this is the officer addressing, while they're over here working, the firefighters are working, addressing them to move the apparatus. All right.
Emergency crews, patients, and drivers.
While two other fire engines left the scene, Gregoire says he refused to leave because his rig was acting as a buffer, protecting the ambulance from traffic.
In the middle of patient care, Engineer Gregoire refused, citing
So the firefighter showed what? He showed teamwork. He showed unity. He was blocking to protect the ambulance vehicle. So he had his truck parked like that intentionally, knowing that it would not block traffic, knowing that it would not cause danger. So, officer, when you bust on the scene, even though you arrived a little during the aftermath, you should have joined in on teamwork. And as a police officer, that's your duty. That should be natural step, natural cause, right? We're all in this together to make it happen. But instead, you target the firefighter for doing teamwork, a part of his job. Folks, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous, people. And you literally arrest him. All right, so we're going to continue to watch to make sure we catch everything. Smash that like button. I appreciate you as you come into the building.
safety concerns, which led to the officer arresting him for obstruction.
We asked you to clear the road and you said no, and you've been arrested for moving it.
We're in the middle
But
of
sir, you cannot arrest for that. We asked you to clear the road and you said no, so you're getting arrested. Do your homework. What law did you study and certify for? What line of duty did you pass and swore to? Because no, that is not unlawful. It is not a crime. He's protecting the ambulance. That was it was done intentionally, the way he chose to park on the side of the highway, and it did not block traffic. So even if you asked him to move, sir, that is not unlawful, right? But it ends up going to trial. It ended up going to a hearing. And so let's continue to check out that content.
care with patients on the freeway. They're putting him in handcuffs at this time and walking him away.
He made all firefighters look good in that situation. He was there to protect the citizens, and he was willing to take a stand to do that.
Gregoire was handcuffed and detained for approximately 30 minutes before being released, and eventually the officer was identified as Sergio Flores, and the CHP stood by their officer's actions.
A local firefighter who was cuffed by the CHP at an accident scene says that he was humiliated inside the CHP cruiser.
It was a very odd, surreal situation. I asked him, I said, well, are you prepared to take care of these two patients? And he replied, without even thinking, those two people are not my problem.
Afterward, Gregoire filed a
So
lawsuit.
the officer made it clear he didn't give a damn. He wasn't concerned about the victims who got hurt during the accident, the people who needed medical care. It was a pretty, rough accident. The car was flipped upside down. I don't know if there were any infidelities or anything of that nature, if anybody lost their lives, but people were seriously injured. And you attack this man? Like, get for real, people, where they do this at? And so here's the complaint. Again, we're in Southern District of California, State versus Jacob, and the officer, standing arresting officer.
Lawsuit for the wrongful arrest and excessive force.
Because of a bulky uniform and past shoulder pain, he asked Officer Flores to loosen the cuffs.
I said, I'm not going anywhere. Can you please just loosen the cuffs? Click. They got a little bit tired.
Gregoire says when he asked again, the officer laughed at him.
Officer Sergio Torres claimed that he was entitled to qualified immunity because making the unlawful arrest was a reasonable mistake. He would also argue that handcuffing an arrestee was not excessive force. However, in the lawsuit, Gregoire claimed that on 2 occasions he had asked the officer to loosen the cuffs, and both times the officer tightened them instead.
Gregoire says he's filed a legal claim against the CHP and state because it's clear the incident is being swept under the rug. His attorney, Dan Gillian, says he's uncovered a documented 2010 incident involving Officer Flores threatening another firefighter with arrest.
There's people within the department that I think want to hide certain facts, and that's the problem.
Aside from those,
Y'all, it goes to show that some people are just out of control. This guy was out of control. He had zero respect for the department, for the state, for the emergency workers, for his department, and for the law. He had zero respect. This is just an unhinged cop on the loose. That's what we're seeing. Because what he said was he's gonna went back out there harassing other firefighters while they're doing their job. Man, get for real. You ain't got nothing better to do. You have serious problems out here in the world that need to be addressed. People that really need help. What are you doing? This is a waste of time. A waste of energy, people. So tell me what you see, because I see an idiot.
Claims the issue of whether or not Officer Flores had probable cause to arrest and place Gregoire in cuffs was in question as well. In a motion for summary judgment, the district court found that the officer's arrest of Gregoire for obstructing the officer's duties was not justified, given that Gregoire was acting within his duties as a firefighter to ensure the scene of the accident was safe. The court ruled that no reasonable officer would believe it was lawful to arrest a firefighter acting in that capacity. Qualified immunity did not apply, and thus Officer Flores appealed the decision to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Deputy Attorney General Robert Rogoyski from the California Attorney.
This is the court hearing, people. They have a little small hearing and trial or whatnot. And the district court found basically his rights violated. We're in Pasadena, California. All right. He took it to the higher ups so they can have a hearing on it.
Attorney General's office here on behalf of defendants, appellants, California Highway Patrol, and Officer Sergio Flores. May it please the court. This is a qualified immunity case, and the court should find that the doctrine of qualified immunity applies to both of the federal claims in this action. I'm going to start today by talking about the arrest claim, and then I'll move on to the excessive force claim. And then if there's any time remaining, I'll address the issue of jurisdiction over the state law claims. So starting first with the question of qualified immunity for the arrest. There are three independent reasons why this court can reverse the lower court, but the most straightforward is the second prong of the qualified immunity test. Here we have two competing
and so
interests.
they continue to go on into about, the laws, and they're having a hearing qualified immunity. It didn't apply. Everything's over here legit. Factual receipts for show. All right, we show laws in writing in itself. All right, so give me just a second, and I want to skim on down to kind of sum it up near the end of the hearing to see what the outcome of the results was, right? Smash that like button. I appreciate you coming on in the room. Give me 1 second. All right. And I'm going to continue. This should be the end here. All right. And boom, here we go.
And yes, so to be specific, deferring the decision here in favor of giving us an opportunity to mediate, yes, we would be interested. If that doesn't happen, we remain confident that they admit there's no case on point. There's no case on point that decides the second prong of the qualified immunity issue.
All right, so he says there's no case on point.
Okay, thank you.
There's no
Mr.
case on point.
Robinson, would you be interested in perhaps participating in mediation before our mediation unit?
I believe so, Your Honor. I'm perhaps not the right person to ask about that. I'm principally the appellant lawyer, but I do understand kind of how the case is proceeded. And it is my understanding that there may, I can't disclose too much in the way of settlement discussions. I understand there have been settlement discussions, and there may have actually been a mediation already. I'm not sure. It was our understanding that the case essentially was settled. And again, I don't want to represent something that may or may not be correct, but it's my belief at least that the CHP is the one that has pushed this appeal forward. We're always interested in settlement talks and trying to make this go away. And I think we've really tried to do.
What went on is when he actually went to the 9th District Court, right? Then he appealed it. And so now it's to a higher up court and basically negotiating on a settlement. That's what's going on.
Do that before having to go through all the briefing and everything else like that. I don't know what the appropriate process would be at this stage. But yes, I think we would be happy to accept deferred briefing or deferred ruling.
Counsel, I think the normal type of order that we enter in some cases would be an order to the parties that would ask them to advise if they both wanted to mediate, or we'd have the mediation office contact the parties and we'd say that submission was deferred until the parties had time to respond to that. And that if they wanted to mediate, then we'd defer submission until the conclusion of the mediation.
I believe that'd be absolutely appropriate, yes.
And then whenever we knew that it wasn't going to be mediated, then we'd proceed to develop and issue an opinion.
Yes, Your Honor. We would be.
And Judge slumped over. Looked like it's time for him to retire. But anyhow, they're just negotiating on a settlement. That's what they got going on. They've already ruled that his rights were violated, that there was no justification from the officers end, right? And so now they're just coming to an agreement of how they're going to solve it or settle it.
Be open to that, certainly.
What if you could make a song using only your voice? Let's start with the drums.
And we will skip the ad.
All right. Thank you very much, Counsel.
Thank you, Your Honors.
Gregor versus CHP and Flores is submitted, and this session of the court is adjourned for today. Thank you both.
The Ninth Circuit reviewed the case and determined that the district court's ruling was correct. The court held that qualified immunity did not apply because the law was clearly established that arresting a firefighter for performing his duties at an emergency scene would violate the firefighter's Fourth Amendment rights. They concluded,
so no qualified immunity. Qualified immunity denied. And so some people may say, well, because he's in a certain status, a certain neighborhood, or of a certain race, that's the reason why it went down the way it did. And I would say, welcome to our world, to the daily average people, the taxpayers, the blue collar workers, the middle class, the upper middle class, right? The minorities. These are the things that we endure and we go through. And I have to give big ups to the state of California because they don't play the radio. So that plays a big factor in it, excluding all of the other non-factors, right? They're a blue state and they go hard and they definitely, honor the people, for sure. Our voices are power.
that it was well established that public safety officials like firefighters have a duty to secure accident scenes for safety purposes, and that arresting them under such circumstances would violate their constitutional protections. They agreed with the district court that no reasonable officer would have believed that arresting Gregoire for doing his job was lawful. And finally, 4 years after the incident, and only after the Ninth Circuit shot down the officer's appeal, the CHP settled with Gregoire for an undisclosed amount, instead of continuing to fight the ridiculous case. Choosing
undisclosed amount. So we don't know exactly how much he got, right? But, he got compensated. And definitely, give me 1 second. And he definitely won his case. So you tell me your thoughts. I think he was just a lunatic. I think this guy was just a maniac. And he had a history of doing that, even to other workers, other public servants, other emergency, non-emergency responders. So it's insane. I never heard of it going down like that before. You just out to attack your own when you all are somewhat in the same field, working together to accomplish a goal. Appreciate you. Thanks for your support. And until next time, I am your host here at School for Justice, where we will always live, love, and laugh, and continue to speak truth to power. Salute, fam.